Hey there, this is Lady C.
And this is JT.
Welcome to the Critical Thoughts. In the upcoming episode, we're going to be speaking with Mr. Best, and he is a third generation ex-Jehovah's Witness, unbaptized. And he's going to be talking all about his experiences and what he went through with the Jehovah's Witnesses and how he made life decisions based on the information he was taught. So we want to welcome Robert Best.
You're listening to The Critical Thought, where we challenge our listeners to use critical thinking when examining the teachings of Jehovah's Witnesses.
Good morning. I want to thank y'all for having me on. Allowing me to be part of this discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. Glad to have you here, man. Especially view the fact that you and I, we share a couple things in common. And we'll get a chance to discuss that this morning.
Right. And one of the things I've noticed is that no matter who we speak to, whether they were a baptized Jehovah's Witness or not, everyone is feeding from the same trough and we're having the same experiences. But everybody has a different twist to their own story. So, Robert, you want to give us a little bit of backstory about your life, how your family got hooked up and connected with the group known as Jehovah's Witnesses?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, sure. It all started with my paternal grandmother, my father's mother. She was a Jehovah's Witness. And then I do believe she introduced it to my mother. And then my mother became a Jehovah's Witness. And then a little while after that, during the time when my mother was still studying, she was baptized while I was inside of her. And then transitioned that, with the family. Then I had aunts and uncles, and most of my siblings are Jehovah's Witnesses.
Wow.
Okay, so hold a second now. Did you just say that your mother was baptized while she was pregnant with you?
Yes.
And so that means that you are baptized.
Yeah, you baptized.
I'm sure you heard her answer those two questions.
She answered them for you, right?
Right.
Oh man,
we don't get that many. We got somebody else that said that, but we don't get that one too much.
Yeah, that's we get too often. Could you let everybody know where you're from, Best?
I'm originally from Brooklyn, New York.
All right.
Did you hear that accent?
Yeah, that Brooklyn accent.
Right.
Yeah.
No matter how far you move away, you never get rid of that Brooklyn accent or that New York, New England accent, right? Really?
Yeah, and I've lived in quite a few different places, but that accent is always distinct. I'll have it until I die.
Oh yeah. Being down on Atlantic Avenue and all that kind of stuff, very, very interesting. Being you're from Brooklyn, that means automatically then you're right there with Bethel. You're right there at the headquarters. Yeah.
Right.
Did you ever get a chance to go by the headquarters? Because it's funny, and the reason I ask this, you know how people who live in tourist cities or in places like that, like for example, we live here in the DC area, and there are certain places that we haven't been, and there are people who travel all the way around the world to come, but because we live here, like I see the monument every day. I'll come back next time. Did you get a chance when you was growing up to visit Bethel?
Yes, I remember it was I was probably about 6, 7 years old, and it was a congregational trip. We went up there to Bethel one weekend for a day. And then we even went up to the farm that was upstate New York. For it was another day trip we went as a congregation.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's really nice. People who bring their families, they can show them everything in the organization, and this is just so nice and clean and wonderful. Jehovah is definitely here, and it is impressive. I mean, you can say what you want about the organization, but they do have a very impressive public presentation. They make sure that, as we say, they make sure the brand looks good.
Right. It is a great recruitment tool. I do remember while we were up there at Bethel and at the farm, it's subliminally and even overtly, it was pushed how, you want to come to Bethel and do this. You want to come to the farm and do this. And then you would go back to the congregation and you figure for the first month or so, those that were in the congregation that were of age, that was one thing that they were constantly bombarded with, is going to Bethel, going to the farm, and don't worry about this, don't worry about that, because Jehovah's going to take care of everything if you give them this time.
Yeah. Did you have Bethel Lice in your congregation?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, some are signed, but
I do remember a few of them being there, and I also would remember how the mothers would fight over on who's having them over for Sunday so they could hook their daughters up with the Bethel Lice.
You ain't right. Yeah, that is very true. In fact, that was one of the first things that the Bethel Lice in my hall told me. They said, JT, now you gotta be careful, because the sisters are gonna be inviting us over all the time. And many times they got, the daughters, my daughter cooked this. She's a fine cook. And you're like, yes, Sister David, she really is. And so that was the constant thing that as a Bethelite you had. But I remember having a conversation with some of the local guys, and they oftentimes hated the Bethelites because their parents would always make reference. Why don't you be like the Bethelites? And many times everybody didn't want to go to Bethel. Everybody didn't have to go to Bethel and work for free, basically. And I remember having this conversation after I got to know a couple of guys in the hall. And one guy said, man, like, Bethel ain't for me, man. It's not for me. My mom was always on my back. Like, why don't you be like the Bethelites? Be like the Bethelites. And as you said, it is a great recruiting tool. And that is how in this organization, we recruit people to become pioneers. We recruit people who are teenagers and they see other people getting baptized. And parents, why don't you be like John? He's already baptized and he's a year younger than you. And so this undue pressure. Well, when you were growing up, what did you find in terms of yourself? Because you never got baptized. So how was it for you? Because it can make you the man out, as it were.
Well, with me, it was like, all right. I remember when I was younger, and this was on a Thursday night meeting. Matter of fact, it was with one of the Bible studies I was having with my mother and my sisters, and it was a publication called "Listening to the Great Teacher." And as we would go to the publication, I remember not being able to see me in it, so far as there weren't a lot of Black people in the publication. And I asked my mother why, and she couldn't answer me, but she told me to ask the elders. So it was a Thursday night at the Kingdom Hall. I went up to three of the elders that were standing together, and I asked them, and the answer that they gave me was like, not to worry about it because we were of no significance. So at that point in time, probably like about between the ages of 8 and 9, I really started knowing that I didn't fit inside of the religion. And then as, I got older and older, and, I just started gradually, just pulling away from them and whatnot.
Yeah. How was it for you with your grandmother and your mom being witnesses in terms of things like in school? How were you impacted in that area?
Well, okay, like now with school, like with school, especially like you figure like with elementary school, Christmas parties would come up, Easter, Halloween, and birthday parties. You had to go sit in another classroom. So now you're being made to be a pariah. And then you got everyone that's going to make fun of you because you can't do what they do. And in my case, lots of times it wasn't explained. Like, okay, we don't celebrate Christmas because it's a pagan holiday. It's really Nimrod's birthday or anything like that. You don't do it because Jehovah said you can't do it, but there was never ever a why, and you could never ever ask why because you can't question anything. And a child is very inquisitive, and I tell a child not to question anything. To me, you stifle that child's growth. And then I'm going to high school. I love football. And I could have gotten a scholarship to play football and also an academic scholarship. But because of being affiliated or associated with the Jehovah's Witnesses, my mother would not allow me to do that. She wouldn't sign the permission slips I needed to play any athletics. And then with academic, my mother would not give up any of her tax information that I would have needed to further education. So after a while, that kind of sort of crushes your spirit, and then you've still been indoctrinated with how the world is going to end any day. So now you're at that age, you're still trying to figure it out and find yourself.
Excellent point. And I think that is the reason why, and ladies, see, we've had this discussion. That's the reason why we decided to do this little series, because what we wanted people to see is that people in all aspects who are affiliated with this religious belief system, their lives are impacted one way or the other. And for many people's lives, it is long-term impact. The point you made about your mom did not want to give up the tax information so that you could have, and that's the whole thing. You could have got a free scholarship, full ride on the scholarship, so it wouldn't even cost you anything. So when witnesses throw out, well, college is expensive, well, I would have got a free ride. So I don't know about that cost stuff. And so even that, the witnesses' kids could not do it. There are so many people who will be watching this video who will be able to relate to this because they had coaches and teachers and guidance counselors who came to their mama and daddy and said, your son is gifted, your daughter's talented. I just need you to allow us to let them develop these. And they said, no, world ending, won't need it soon. And like you said, that crushed, that really has crushed a lot of, the untold stories of witness kids who grew up, who never got baptized or got baptized. You got the same shaft. You got the same shaft. Doesn't matter when you baptized or not. You got that same shaft.
Right.
And as many great minds that were in and are in that organization. I mean, you have brothers and sisters in there that are doctors, scientists, lawyers, but they will never ever reach their full potential because of their one drawback.
Yeah.
They're a Jehovah's Witness.
Yeah. And
what did your science teacher say to you, Robert? We had spoken offline, and you had talked about your science teacher. What was the deal with that?
My science teacher, Mr. Weiss, had told me I have the mind of a scientist because of how inquisitive I was, and he was suggesting for me to go to college and go into a scientific field. And my coach, I remember my coach, Coach Kearney, he seen me in the locker room. I never tried out for the sport, but he made me come to practice. But because of Jehovah's Witness, nothing ever fell through.
But when you practiced, did you practice during school hours?
Yes.
And that's why you were able to get away with that, right?
Right. Mm-hmm. But when it came game time and I needed to have his permission slip signed, that was it.
That was it. Yeah. Because I know in New York, they do a lot of intramurals among the school. What PS did you go to?
I went to August Martin High School.
Okay.
What's a PS?
Public school.
Oh, okay. Well, just for people who don't know.
And that's how they label it. Yeah, they're PS 34, PS 18, because it just got so many schools in New York City. They're like, we're not naming all these. Just put a PS and call it a day. And eventually, a lot of schools do have names. But that was the first thing. I'm like, PS what? PS2? What's that? And then the kids in the hall be like, that's the name of the school, brother JT. Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
We had real PlayStation.
We had PlayStation. I know, right? That's what I thought it was. Because we had real names for school, and then so it does make an impact on people. Well, I tell you, this whole education, and you know what's so ironic about it now is, take for example, what does the organization want now? The organization wants educated and trained people. That's amazing. I was listening to a video the other day, and they were talking about, we're looking for screenwriters. We're talking somebody who has a communication degree, perhaps, or someone who went in film school. You know, goodness well, a Jehovah's Witness kid who came to the kingdom, I'm gonna be a script writer. I want to do
Right.
film. Do film. You better get down to Kingdom Hall. And so,
Yeah.
It's pretty bad.
and so now that's what they want. And we see the same thing with, at Bethel. When I was coming along, you had to be a pioneer. Now they want people with degrees. And so it's almost like those of us who were back then in the day, we look at the organization like this is definitely not the same organization I was a part of.
Well, they
And
changed. But you know what, JT? Remember how when we were coming along and we would hear about some of the crazy things that they did, and then all of a sudden you'd be going, oh, that's what they used to teach. So your new recruits are looking at us and saying, oh, please, they don't do that anymore. But they don't realize that real lives were affected by these teachings.
Absolutely.
You know?
And that is the point. The same way with people who went to prison because they didn't take alternative service job. Well, that was the brothers. No, these guys' lives were impacted. And so this is what makes this high control group literally work, because they push aside things that impact the people. And they say, well, let's look at this over here. But yet when we do Bible studies, we tell the Bible studies, now you look at your church's record. But yet, as witnesses, if you try to bring up anything about our record, we'd be like, "Nah, we ain't talking about that." Yeah.
Right. So now, Robert, you've gone through grade school, you've gone through high school. So what's happening in your life after you graduate? How are things shaping up for you?
Okay, well, at a certain point in time, I had to go in front of the elders to let them know that I no longer wanted to be associated or affiliated with the Jehovah's Witnesses. And I was probably like about 15, 16 at that time. And so at that point, and obviously my mother was there with me. So after I made that clear, her response to me was that I have to house you, but that's all I will do. I will not clothe you or anything else. So other than food and clothing, other than food and housing, I was on my own. So if I needed money, things like that, I had to get it the best way I could get it. So I had dropped out of high school in my 11th year. And then a year after that, I went into the military because I really needed to find direction and get better discipline in my life. So that's what I did to help me start my recovery.
Is there any reason why you dropped out of high school? Was it because of the pressure at home?
Well, yes. And then it was like, in my opinion, my thought process was, well, once I finish high school, what am I going to do? Nothing. I can't go to college. I can't do anything else. So why even go any further?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. That is the process of throwing their children out. That is almost a standard thing in the Jehovah's Witnesses. They will throw their children out on the streets at anything. I mean, that happened in my family. 2 members of my family, they were thrown out on the street. I mean, they were literally just thrown out on the street as young teenagers. Probably at undoubtedly the worst time in their life when they really needed help because of what they were dealing with. But this is a very common thing. This religion, the elders will teach, that the organization teaches to kick your children out. And Lady C and I, we often talk about how that it's ironic that now we've come back 25, 30 years later. Those same parents that kicked out the witness kids who thought they was going to get into the new system and reel around the corner, they now are having to turn back to the witness kids, the kids that they kicked out for support. Because we know the organization doesn't do senior citizens too well.
Nope.
Right. A lot of times we talk to people and we get the story and we hear about them graduating, but your situation was a little bit more tragic than other people because you obviously were really hurt because here your coach is telling you, I want you to play the sport. Here your academic science teacher saying, you have a brilliant mind. I want you to go off to school. So this is really affecting you to the point where if I can't do these things, I should quit. So what were the other people doing in your circle, the other people that was in the congregation, did any other kid face the same thing? Did you guys band together and try to come up with a plan of how you guys could, circumvent this Jehovah's Witness thing? What did you see happening?
Well, it was a lot of the youth that I had hung out with at that time that were going to the Kingdom Hall. All of us left, but all of us left for different reasons. A lot of them left because they wanted to taste and experience the world, but they still believed. And then you had those that were like myself that didn't believe. Now, those that left because they wanted to be rebellious and do their own thing, those are the ones that had the most problems. Those are the ones that got tricked up in drugs and everything else like that. And those of us that left because we did not believe, not so much as we banded together, but we all, to this day, I'm still tight with a lot of them. And we just did different things, but we always supported each other. Like me going into the military and other ones that were able to turn it around and make it toward and do things in college. So, I mean, that and we supported each other with our decisions and endeavors. And that's how, we basically were able to turn a lot of things around.
Yeah, that's good. And that's kind of where we are with what we do as well. We tell people, don't leave and become the poster child. And you have to band together. And that's what channels like this, there are lots of channels. And you will find that when we interview people like yourself and others, we have never had someone who at this point in their life, and they're starting to realize this is not the truth, who was saying, I just want to do badness. They're like, man,
right.
They took a few years that I can't get back, and now I need to refocus and everything. And so that's what the organization says. We always want to do bad, but really we just wanted to be treated right and be told the truth. That's really all it was.
Right.
But I just feel like the foundation was so flawed.
Yeah.
Because, I had a learning. It took me a little bit of time to grasp concepts. It wasn't that I wasn't good. It was just that I needed a tutor. I thought differently than most people. And then my last name had me sitting in the back of the room and I couldn't see the board. And I was very shy. So I had a lot of stuff going on. Plus I was a Jehovah's Witness. So I feel for a lot of people that have these talents and stuff, because I realized that I wasn't getting the scholarship, but I realized how many other people were getting one, because I was doing good to get through. But when I finally went to college, I ended up graduating at the top of my class, but I just needed a tutor.
Yeah.
So for the kids that were struggling, who thought the end was coming, we really got a really bad deal because we still needed help in the classroom. You know?
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a very because they're talented witness kids, and they get pushed down. And if you're struggling as a kid, you're not going to. The fact that witnesses don't think much of education out the gate, you definitely not going to get no help. I mean, it's just a lose. It's a lose, man. Just being a part of this group, and on so many levels, you just lose. And then at the end of the day, you find out all this stuff we was doing was bogus. That's messed up. That's messed up.
Like if you go back to 1975, and with the prophecy, the Jehovah's Witness Watchtower Society's prophecy of the world ending in 1975, and then on all of their articles and books, you seeing everybody dying and being destroyed in horrific ways. That's one thing I thought was one of the most cruelest things any organization can do to a child, is show that to a child. Now you have traumatized that child for life, because I remember it was time I would break down and cry because I told a little lie, or I didn't do something correctly. So it's like, during that time period, you as a child, you're walking around on pins and needles trying to do everything right so you can make it into Jehovah's kingdom, and it never transpired. never ever transpired.
That's a great point that you're making, because you know something?
Great point.
Think about when you go to the movie theater and how it's rated, you know, the G ratings, the PG and the rated R. And to me, Jehovah's Witness content would be like rated R, because you're sitting in this meeting and no one is really, even though the adult is there with you sitting at the Kingdom Hall, nobody is checking on your pulse to see, did Johnny just fall off his chair to this news that they said that the end is coming? And how is this affecting my child's mental state? That's not happening.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I think when you stop and think about it, Jehovah's Witnesses are one of the few religions where their children are taught in the first and second grade to look around their classroom and see all of their classmates as dead. Because that's what I remember parents would say, little Johnny, Jehovah's gonna have to destroy little Johnny. And he's thinking, little Johnny, we play soccer together, we play baseball at school. He's not bad, but Jehovah gonna have to kill him. And so for a child, and we've seen that with parents, non-witness parents, child come home crying. Why are you crying? You gonna die. What you gonna die? I got good health. No, they say the Kingdom Hall, you're gonna die since you don't go to the meetings. And so when you feed a diet to children like that, year in, year out, by the time they become adults, man, you're so callous toward non-witnesses, they worldly. They got to go. And so that's the mindset that you grow up, and that has nothing to do with being baptized. That has nothing to do with being a baptized. You was 6 years old when your mama went to the first Kingdom Hall, and then you 18. You done had 12 years of deep indoctrination by the time you're an adult.
That's
and
true.
so it affects us even when, and this is one of the things we find too. We are affected, even today, man, even myself, my wife, we talk about this. You have this view toward non-Jehovah's Witnesses to this very day. It's hard to make friends. It's hard to get close because see, the formative years when you make friendship, they were missed. And so then you got to play catch up, as it were. And so witnesses who leave, persons who leave, especially in adulthood, they have literally, you have to struggle to kind of catch up to where you are in terms of mentally, emotionally, financially, of course.
But you know what I think about the friendship thing now that I look back? I think it's more so that we were trained a different way.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's not that you can't make friends.
That's true.
It's that the people that you're trying to get into their group, you don't have the same mindset.
Yeah. I would see that Jehovah's Witnesses, ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, we have PTSD, post-traumatic society syndrome. And
you sick. Oh, you sick. That is true.
Oh my God, you're right.
Yeah,
Can you repeat
you're
that?
right. And you're right. I mean, you're right. I'm just laughing because it's so true.
Post-traumatic society syndrome. And a lot of times it's not that we can't go out there as when you're a witness and make friends, is that in the back and even in the forefront of your mind, you're believing that they're going to die. So nobody wants to carry that burden. So you shy away from them. That's just my thought process on it.
Yeah, that is true. We're more reluctant. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think that when you go to networking events and we really were getting ready to start getting out and socializing more. And then like 8 years ago, my mom got sick. And so we ended up caretaking and stuff. And then now JT's mom is sick. And then the pandemic hit. And so it's like, it just keeps on pushing us further and further from being around groups. But there are people that you can get with and do things with that are doing things for the community and stuff like that. So there's a lot of people, you just got to go out and find them. And a lot of times it doesn't always have to be faith-based friends. It could just be people that just have a hobby in common.
Common interest. Yeah.
Maybe you might want to join a ski club or maybe a book club or whatever it is you do. There's people out there doing things.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, one of the things I thought was interesting was Ray France. He made the point that he can now finally look at people not as groups, but as individuals. Because as a witness, you look at everybody as a group. They're on this side and we're on this side. And now you get to realize that people are individuals. And so if there's a person who's nice, you recognize it. But if there's someone who's crazy, I'm not doing. So you don't have to blanket, broad brush entire groups of people, religious people, the non-religious, black, white, whatever. You're able to just deal with a person based on who they are. And that's the difference in the organization, because we put people in the boxes: inactive, low hour publisher, spiritually giant. It kind of we put people in the boxes all the time,
Right.
And we treated people accordingly. If you came from what was considered an unspiritual family or a spiritually weak family, you would be left out of certain social functions. That's what we did. We always did it. And all it meant was you didn't go out and sell books or hawk books on the weekend in Brooklyn every weekend. That's all the difference was. So, it's amazing.
Yeah. I would like to know, now, Robert, you had mentioned 1975. And so, we know all about 1975 ourselves. And so, what did your family think? Do you remember or recall anybody talking about, hey, 1975 came and went? What's up with that? Did you ever hear those talks? Whatever became of that in your family?
Excuses of why it didn't happen. And then lots of times trying to convince us that it wasn't said. My sister, I have an older sister, and when my mother passed, her and my mother weren't speaking to each other, and she was non-baptized. And she started going back to the Kingdom Hall, and I, brought back up 1975 to her again. And she's like, well, I don't recall that happening. I even downloaded Watchtower and Awake articles and emailed them to her. But she went on with that lie that they tell that, well, it wasn't the society that said this, it was individuals. So, I mean, I don't know what to say. They tried their best to explain away the fallacy of that prophecy. And then those that are new that come in, they don't even tell them about that, because I've had some new witnesses that were, straddling. And I would always, I never try to discourage anyone from believing what they want to believe. But I would always suggest to them, you need to do your research and start back with Miller. That's the beginning of the Jehovah's Witnesses. I said they were called Millerites. Google it and then just follow that rabbit down the hole and see where it leads you. And I would leave it at that, because for me to tell you, you're not going to believe me. But for me to tell you to go look for yourself, now you have the option of believing what you read or not believing what you read. That's your choice.
I agree. And you know why I do is because I can't tell you how many times we'll just be in a family discussion, just talk about anything. Let's just say, for instance, a medical issue comes up in the family, and then everybody is just going off of their own what they think. But it's like, when I start asking people, when the doctor told you the diagnosis, did you Google it to learn more about it? No. Or if you, like, I always use the restaurant situation as well. Before I go to a restaurant, I'll Google it to see what the latest reviews are before I go to the restaurant. And now what you're talking about with the Millerites and the Jehovah's Witnesses going way back to that time, it's like, okay, nobody wants to Google that either. So, and I know a lot of times people, they just want to believe something. And if they go and unearth it by Googling it, then the reality becomes, what they don't want to really look at as a reality is staring them straight in their face. So sometimes you just think that people don't want to know.
Oh, yeah. Oh, there's no question. The organization specializes in revision. They rewrite their history. Every 20 or 30 years, they rewrite their history. A perfect example is how they write articles. When the Watchtower makes a change in teachings many times, they will just write it as a statement in the article. They will not reference that we're changing from this. So if you just pick up the article, you'll think this is what they've been teaching all the while, because they make no reference to what they was teaching just the day before the article. And so
Right.
it is a writing style that the Watchtower, and it's very, very effective. The Watchtower will often make these changes, and they will not acknowledge this is a change from a previous understanding. Sometimes they do, but other times they do not. And I've had people who have read, see what it says right here. I said, but do you know what they were teaching the day before this? No, go back and look at these magazines here. Oh, I know that. Yeah. No, yeah. And
But
so,
a lot of times, when you speak about the older publications that are no longer in circulation, oh, that's old truth. And the question is, when does truth become old? I mean, the truth is the truth. Yeah. And it's like people I find that have stumbled across the Jehovah's Witnesses Society or the company or the organization, however you might want to say it, they're searching for something, and that becomes the opiate to soothe whatever they feel is hurting them, not realizing that opioid is doing more harm than good.
Yeah. I mean, the organization, I tell people all the time, the organization probably has one of the best religious products in the marketplace.
Yes.
And the reason why is because most religious denominations, they promise people a chance to sit on clouds, drink milk, eat honey, and play harps. Jehovah's Witnesses are promising people their eyesight back, their legs back. They're going to see Big Mama again. They're going to have beachfront property. And so people can relate to that. I've been to Hawaii, but I've been to the islands. I know what it's like. And I can live like this every day. Just move the books to the neighborhood. And so, when you live in a difficult circumstance, that's why there's a certain group of people that's attracted to this organization. When you live in the hood, man, you around drug dealers, and them two sisters come to your front door and show that magazine and say, would you like to live with your family? The answer will always be yes.
Yes.
How could you say no? Someone is showing you beachfront property. You talking about, nah, I don't want to live there. I like living here, right here where I'm at with the crack house. No. And so it appeals to people. And then when you take this around the world to other countries that may be more economically challenged than it is here in the United States, we're considered, a very wealthy country. But when you look where the witnesses operate, they operate in some of the poorest places in the earth, man. So this message appeals. And when you and I and others like my wife, we come up and say, well, take a look. No, you snatching away my dream, and I don't want you doing that. I want to go back to sleep. And so that's what they do.
Right.
What you just said reminds me of conversations that me and my mother had before she passed. She was trying to get me to come back to the Kingdom Hall. And it was like Friday nights, we would have these discussions, and she would hit me with a Bible scripture, and I was able to take the same scripture and make it mean what I was saying. And then I would hit her with logic. So finally, as coming to one of our last conversations, she had to admit that what I was telling her was true. But her whole thing was, yes, I agree with you, but let me believe what I want to believe and the way I want to believe it. And I had to respect that. And we never had any more conversations after that. And it was a couple of weeks later was when she had an aneurysm and died.
Yeah. That's why we call our channel what we call it, Critical Thinkers, because we have found that is the missing component when it comes to a typical Jehovah's Witness. No critical thinking, or little or limited critical thinking.
But
and that's I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Go, let's take it from the top. Go ahead.
Okay. I think another thing also is when it's like an abusive relationship. They take you away from your family and your friends, and they got you all to themselves. So now you realize, if I leave, I have no family, I have no friends. I have shunned all of my family and all my friends for this. So I got to ride this until the wheels fall off. And that's what a lot of them do. Like in with Jim Jones, a lot of his members that drunk the Kool-Aid didn't want to, but they had to ride it all the way out because they gave up everything. So they had nothing. And that's what Jehovah's Witnesses do.
Yeah, that's an
Good
excellent point, man.
point.
Yeah, that's on point.
That's a good point. So then, Robert, what else happened in your life? You want to talk about any other experiences that, relate to your decisions after you left the organization, or you decided that you didn't want to become a Jehovah's Witness?
Well, one thing was that after I really started doing my own personal research and I started finding out falsehoods, fallacy after fallacy, falsehood after falsehood, I became Muslim and I got into Islam, which is what gives me my peace. And that's another one of my coping mechanisms, and it's still a continuous healing process.
Oh yeah, I mean, and that's kind of what you will see. I tell people all the time when people leave the organization, don't think everybody is going to go in the same direction. I think that to me, that's you're carrying over the same mindset that you had when you was a Jehovah's Witness. Everybody got to do things our way, and really we see people who leave this organization. They literally span the entire gamut. I mean, there are people, there are people who they decide they don't want to believe anything or practice any particular faith, all the way to people who become diehard religious followers in other groups. And so I think it's you have to acknowledge that people are going to go in different directions. So that is part of life. But our focus for us, if you want to know something about what we experience, we believe that people should get the pros and the cons, especially involving this religious group. And this is what I can talk about because this is what I live.
Mm-hmm. And then also it's like you have to find your own inner peace. You have to find what's going to give you peace. And like I said, I don't try to influence anyone's decision on what you want to or not to believe, but I believe whatever you're going to believe in, you must research it because there's so many charlatans. I think that's the right word out here that are looking to deceive people, and so you've got to research whatever you're going to do.
Oh, that's for sure. That's for sure. Now, one of the things you had mentioned, and this is something that as Jehovah's Witnesses we really couldn't do, and that is get involved in the community, in our own neighborhood. Like Lady C and I, we have been involved in different little things in our community as well. What now things are you now free to be involved in that you probably couldn't do as a Jehovah's Witness?
Okay, I'm part of a group called the Peacekeepers. My shirt says, "I am present for peace." And what we do is we call it the hour of power. We go out into the community for an hour that might be in a rough drug area. And we just ask, those over there to, just give us this 1 hour to work in the community so we can have peace for that 1 hour. And as being a Jehovah's Witness, I wouldn't have been allowed to do any of that. And even also, I was able to run my own business from 2007 to 2016. I had a rather successful security company. And the Jehovah's Witnesses, entrepreneurship is pretty much frowned upon because that takes away from field service time. And then even through that, I was able to do mentorship, speak to different different youth organizations. All those things I would not have been able to do being a Jehovah's Witness.
Yeah, I just want to add something, just add a thought, because you mentioned how entrepreneurship and Jehovah's Witnesses, because somebody's going to watch the video and they're going to say, I know brother so-and-so, he got a cleaning business. One of the things about the Jehovah's Witnesses is they really don't do true entrepreneurship. Because true entrepreneurship means you're going to start a little business on your own and you want it to grow. And for most people who start a business and they're working for themselves, in order for their business to grow, it means they're going to work more than 8 hours. They're going to work a lot of hours. And everybody in the organization knows if you're working a lot of hours, that means you got to give up those hours from something else.
Right.
And so as long as a brother got a little cleaning business with a little squeegee and he's doing 2 or 3 little banks a night, he's fine. But if his goal is to put 25 trucks on the road, he gonna have a problem. No, brother, we've seen you missing a lot of meetings. Well, I had to go in because I had guys who was off tonight. And so we've seen so many witnesses who start businesses, but they are not going to be able to grow these businesses because that is anybody who works for themselves know a person who's self-employed doesn't work 8 hours. And no, you don't. And in Watchtower world, you cannot give hours that you need to be given to your meetings out in field service. Because I've seen it. We had brothers when I was in different halls. They had businesses, and those guys, I got to work, man. I got to work. I can't make the meeting tonight because I'm running my business. And at that point, he gets dogged. Now, here's the catch. Once the brother gets the business big, he's making major bank. All of a sudden, he's the greatest thing in the circuit. I mean, this organization is absolutely crazy, man. They'll take a brother who starts his business, they'll dog him. Minute he gets the business off the ground, Brother Davis, you might get a job with Brother Davis. And you just dog Brother Davis. And then we see the same thing with college. You get dogged, you go to college. Get your law degree. You want to work here at Bethel? We could use that. This organization, man, is just bogus, man. Just bogus. This is what I tell people. If you want to do something that benefits you going to get dogged. But if you're going to do something that benefits the organization, you'll praise the high heaven. And that is so sad. And as a result, anything that you personally want to do as a accomplishment in your own personal life, you can get dogged for trying to do it. But if you're going to do it for the organization, you're the greatest thing since sliced bread.
That's true. And just to piggyback off of what Robert was talking about the entrepreneurship is you definitely weren't going to get mentored on how to do a better job at being an entrepreneur either. And that meant you're not going to be coming to the Kingdom Hall talking about it and bragging about, hey, I got a new client, and talking about your go up goals and this, your business and stuff. Because I did that when I was, trying to get my business off the ground in the 90s and stuff. And it was like, people were looking at me like, you could be out in field. I mean, they didn't say it.
That was the look.
But they were looking at me like, she over here talking about her business. She should be over here pioneering. You didn't feel the love and the camaraderie of you, doing something or making some strides.
There's no support. You're not going to be supported. You will not be supported. And if you have those type of endeavors and you're discussing it, you will not be supported. Well, brother, do you really need 8 trucks on the road? You got 2.
Right.
Your son got. And be like, well, brother, you can't serve 2 masters. So either you're going to serve Jehovah or you're going to have your business. Which one?
You got that right. And see, the thing is now, here we go. Let's double click on this. You weren't even baptized.
Yeah.
But we can all sit here and talk the same language because we got the same information from the same group of people.
Yeah. That's
true. So it's really, it's like, but think about this. Now, remember Steve Jobs?
Yes.
How Steve Jobs talked about how he dropped out of college, but they still let him go to the school and learn things in the classroom. But you couldn't take that knowledge from him either. Was it him or Bill Gates?
I'm not for sure.
Am I right?
I know Bill Gates dropped out of college.
But Steve Jobs, he was the one. I have to fact check this first, but I did his memoir, not his memoir, but I did his story. And it talked about how the professors allowed him to come to the class, even though he had dropped out. And he was still sitting there learning. So just because he didn't get his degree didn't mean that he didn't learn something. That's the point I'm making. So the same thing with people who are going to the Kingdom Hall, just because you didn't get your Jehovah's Witness degree or your diploma, your certificate of baptism, doesn't mean that you didn't learn what they're teaching.
Right. It also doesn't mean that you were not damaged by what they were teaching.
Yeah, because your decision-making process was influenced by the same information.
Right.
Right.
But I think a lot of people They saw the they saw, I think a lot of people saw the unbaptized witnesses got treated better. But it depends on the circle of friends you had or the area that you lived in. Because in my area, anybody that didn't get baptized and they got rid of that old rule of no longer disassociating unbaptized witnesses, they accepted them with open arms. You know, people that might not have been living the best life in terms of getting out of trouble, staying out of trouble, they were reared as witnesses. But then my Jehovah's Witness family that was baptized, they invited them back into their fold. Whereas some people who, you know, lived in other families or different communities in the organization, they didn't do that to those unbaptized people.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Well, I guess, I mean,
it just depends on the area that you live in. And like everybody says that Jehovah's Witnesses are the same all over, and they're not.
Oh no.
It just depends.
Yeah.
What was your experience? Are they still shunning? Are they shunning you right now?
yes. All right. As I said, my uncle, two of my cousins. Now, obviously, their family said they would have known whether I was baptized or not baptized. So now, when it was my decision that I no longer wanted to be associated or affiliated with the Jehovah's Witnesses, they stopped talking to me. And then years later, they said, oh, well, you know, we were under the impression that you were baptized, so we thought we weren't supposed to talk to you. How could you be under the impression that I was baptized? Because had I been baptized, it would have been a family event, and then the whole family takes you out afterwards because everyone's so happy about that. Also, I remember a time when I was up on Jamaica Avenue, and I see my aunt up there. I hadn't seen her in a while. So I crossed the street to greet her. She looked at me. She became fearful, and she clenched her pocketbook so tight as if I'm going to snatch her bag or try to hurt her. And that was extremely hurtful to me. I mean, she was like a second mother to me at that time. It was like almost like every week and every other weekend, I'm spending the night over their house, spending the weekend over their house. And so, I mean, I don't know, but it was just wild.
Oh my God, that is.
Yeah.
Because when you and I talked offline, I didn't know you were that close to her. Where you were
Yes.
over her. Okay, so I got you.
Yeah.
Oh my
Yes.
God.
I mean,
Like, you don't know who you are.
it was like I got spankings for them for doing wrong stuff. And I've always said an aunt or uncle is only an extension of a mother or father.
Oh, absolutely.
So, I mean,
wow. But
Yeah.
you know something? See, that's the fear factor. Okay, that's the phobia coming out. You know, who is he? He hasn't been to the Kingdom Hall. So obviously he's a shady character. So when she sees you after not seeing you for a while, it's like, oh my God, is he gonna steal my purse? Is he gonna try to hurt me? You know, this is what they teach people. You know, they different people have these kind of attitudes against people that's not going to the meeting. You know, they think you're gonna be like when me and JT left, and they would see us again on the street, different witnesses that knew we had left, and they were expecting that we were gonna be looking all bad and fire and brimstone coming out of our nose and things, you know. And they were like looking at us like they just regular everyday people, but they were expecting something different, you know.
And another thing I feel also is that you have some Jehovah's Witnesses, especially the males, that use this end of the world as a reason to be non-productive. Why should I pursue a way to make a better wage to better support my family if the world going to end tomorrow anyhow? So I'll just take this job flipping burgers so I can pioneer. Or me and my family will stay on welfare so we can pioneer. And I've seen a lot of that went on.
Oh yeah, the organization takes so much from us because of promising us that the world is near, and that's kind of the whole reason. Like I said, we wanted to do this series because this whole series about the unbaptized person is really just it's really just a facet of the people whose lives are touched. And each person deals with things differently. A baptized person will deal with the issue of shunning more so than perhaps an unbaptized person. But the point that we've been trying to make is that anybody who touches this kryptonite is gonna be impacted. We had people who call us. We had a couple call us one time, man. They were not even Jehovah's Witnesses. They never even been to the Kingdom Hall. This guy divorced his wife, remarried. They had a child. He had a child, this girl. The girl becomes one of Jehovah's Witnesses. And all of a sudden, the little girl that they shared, the little girl that he shared, they had visitation rights. All of a sudden, she took her to the Kingdom Hall. And next thing he know, the child don't want to eat certain things, don't want to go to certain places. The child is talking about y'all on Satan's side. And so he was like, wait a minute, what are you doing? And so he calls up and says, well, she's going to the Kingdom Hall. This dude and his new wife got on the phone. Look, they went online looking up what's going on with my child. And they found out. Right? They called us up. He said, look, man, I'm not a Jehovah's Witness. My wife, she's not a Jehovah's, but we've been impacted by this crazy religion over it. What's going on?
Yep. I wonder what happened to them too.
Yeah,
we got to try to find email.
And so here's a person who has never been involved at all, yet his life is falling apart. And so you will have people who are married to witnesses. One of the number one things we run into is people who disfellowship. They get married. They don't tell their spouse, I used to be a Jehovah's Witness. They don't say anything about that. And then something will happen in their life. The mama might die or whatever. And all of a sudden, I want to go back to the Kingdom Hall. Well, the average person thinking, my wife or husband want to go back to church. That's good. Go on back to church, baby. He don't realize she's going to the Kingdom Hall. And all of a sudden, all the things they used to do, the friends they used to hang out with, we're going to so-and-so's house tonight for to watch a football game. Well, they worldly. They worldly? We go on. And so
or something as simple as a Thanksgiving dinner that the person has always done.
Yeah.
You know.
And so all of a sudden their life is being turned upside down and they never went to the Kingdom Hall. And so the point that we're trying to make is that all of these different little segments of people, their lives can be turned upside down by having family and friends who are part of this religion. And so a person who like you grew up when you like we've been telling folks the last couple of weeks. When you was in the third grade, they walk you down to the principal's office while they sat back there and ate the cupcake. So don't tell me I wasn't impacted by this religion. It's just there are different degrees in different areas and different levels. But to deny that people were not impacted like yourself, man, you close your eyes to reality. It's just an unfortunate thing because we find people like you. Here, I mean, think about this. Here you are, man. You've been gone 20 years, and you still can reflect back on how you were impacted. So this is something that, I think it's one of those situations where we will never get it out of our mind because we were so immersed in it. The best that we can do is learn how to take what happened and move on with our lives in terms of going back to school or recultivating relationships with family we cut short, relatives and stuff. Those are the things that we can do now. But to say that we just going to not be impacted by something that became so ingrained in your life. And the point you had made earlier about the children, we can't explain things. I remember hearing this one story. The sister said, what happened was they was having the birthday and she couldn't explain what it was. The teacher, why can't you eat the birthday cake? And all she could say was John the Baptist got his head cut off.
Yeah.
You're in the third grade and you're looking at your teacher and saying John the Baptist got his head cut off. They think you are Looney Tunes, man. They realize this child is crazy.
Yeah.
Right.
So we couldn't explain why we couldn't explain why we didn't do certain things. And yet as children, we had to carry that burden. And that
That's
is,
Yeah.
true.
I think
You know what?
you know, it's
I,
painful. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
I
Go
know.
ahead.
I was gonna say, a lot of times my only explanation when people ask me why I couldn't do something, it was because I was a Jehovah's Witness,
Yeah.
and that was my
Yeah.
sole answer.
Yeah.
And then when you would say to people, go, okay, I understand.
Yeah, they would. Okay.
Not
Yeah.
me, not me,
Yeah.
because I was raised on a military base,
Yeah.
and there wasn't many people like that was Jehovah's Witnesses on those bases.
Yeah.
And I remember this one girl telling me, "I don't like you because you don't celebrate Christmas." That was her only reason for not liking me.
Yeah.
My only reason to give her was because I'm a Jehovah's Witness, but her only reason for disliking me is because I was a Jehovah's Witness.
Yeah.
You know, so I felt it a lot.
Yeah.
But I think, like, piggybacking off of what JT was saying before about we may not be able to forget the things that we're done, that we've the hand that we've been dealt. But I really feel like if you do your research and you begin to understand why we were done this way, why we
Yeah.
were put in this situation, why we believe these things, that begins to help too. It begins to help you understand why your family won't leave. And that's why we
Yeah.
always say,
Yeah.
when people are having trouble, we understand people will email us, they'll email other people that have YouTube channels and stuff like that. And we always let people know we're not therapists. We do understand what you've been through because we've been through it, but you're going to have to get through this with a therapist. Because one of the things that and I'm going to tell you right now, just being an activist online and talking to people and hearing their stories, I've learned a lot more than I did when we first left about life, about people who are experiencing issues from their childhood. And I will look at somebody who's not a Jehovah's Witness and I'll hear their story and stuff that they've been through. And I was just telling my dad this the other day. I said, we were talking about an issue. And I said, do you know what the issue is with this one individual we were talking about, which was a family member? And I said, that person is still at the same age they were mentally when they had the tragedy that occurred. And I think that's the same thing with Jehovah's Witnesses. You're still mentally that child that was 6 years old, 10 years old, whatever wasn't resolved in your life is where you are mentally. And that's why we strongly recommend that you get some help. And I'll tell you one story, a real quick one. I was talking to a life coach as I'm looking for a life coach. And she said, I am a life coach. I was a life coach, but now, no, I'm sorry. No, she said, I was talking to a life coach and we were talking about therapy. And I asked her, what is the difference between a therapist and a life coach? And she said the difference between a therapist and life coach is the person that needs the therapist needs to resolve issues from their past. But the person that needs a life coach is the person that needs to find out what they need to do with their life going forward. And it kind of stuck with me. And I'm like, okay, so now when we're helping people on our channel, we can determine or help you determine whether you need that therapist or a life coach. Because some people are just kind of stuck and they don't know where they want to go. Their life in the past is not the issue, but getting on track to know where they're going is the problem they're facing. So just talking to people is a lot of the things that we're learning, or I know I'm learning as I go along.
I think it's so important because practically everyone that we have spoken to, I mean, we talked to, oh God, I don't want to try to count, but what we have found is that most people, like the conversation we're having now, most people have never sat down and actually talked about what their life growing up as a witness was. And so we've had so many people say, man, this is the first time I had a chance to get this off my chest. Just talk about it.
That is so true.
And then you get a call 3 or 4 months later. Man, I'm back in school. Man, I done got me a new wife. I have to be that woman. She's great. I live right in the kingdom all where I found her at. And so and so people are able to in many cases, they can jumpstart and keep moving. But you gotta get this out. You really do, because man, we went through some stuff, and it was all basically psychological. That's what makes it interesting. I mean, a lot of us got beat by mom and daddy, but the way the organization molds your mind, makes you view. I tell ladies all the time, they gave us such a false value system. Everything that everybody else views as important and valuable, we discarded as trash. When someone gets a promotion, then they can make more money and take care of their family. We dog the brother for promoting. Yet it's interesting that one of the reasons that witnesses suffer so much now is because now with the demands of the organization on them and the ability not to earn a decent living so that they can take care of their family, they get the double whammy. They now are broke Jehovah's Witnesses trying to keep up all the stuff the organization says to do.
Right.
And the sad part, and the sad part is, man, the saddest part is the people who issue these demands, they're living in the lap of luxury.
Right. Now, Robert, you and I, we had discussed your military career and everything. And what I would like you to tell the audience is the experience that you had. When you are in the military, you are a veteran, and veterans are entitled to certain benefits. You want to kind of share your experience of the benefits that you got that someone in your family wanted to take advantage of?
Oh, okay. All right. Yes. Okay. Now, after I had dropped out of high school, I was trying. That's when I decided I was going to go into the military. So my mother was calling everybody that I knew from the Jehovah's Witness and trying to get them to talk me out of going into the military. So after I signed my contract and then I swear in, now she's calling me, asking me to send her an allotment to help her pay for her house so that we would all have a place to stay. I did it. I love my mother. So, I did it. But when I needed a place to stay, I wasn't allowed to stay there because I wasn't a Jehovah's Witness. Then I got injured. I almost died while I was on active duty. So my mother was contacted, telling her, I was in the hospital. I was in critical condition. My mother was in New York. I was at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. I'm her only son. My sister's only brother. No one came to sit by my bedside. Mind you, I was in a coma for a couple of days. The only family member that came was my father and one of my half sisters. And that was it. But she was against me going in the military, but would take the benefits that I could give her from the military.
That's amazing. I mean, that is being trained well by the organization. They only want you when there is a benefit to them. Always that way.
I know, and it's terrible. I mean, being military, our family, I remember my mother, full-fledged Jehovah's Witness, and every time she would come and visit us here in the DC area, we had to go to every military base to go shopping. I want to go to the commissary over here, the BX over there. We're like, we can't even buy nothing because we don't have an ID card. But yet she wanted to drag us to every base in the area.
And this is when she was still in. This is we're going to the BX and we're going to the commissary and I'm like, well, aren't you a witness? You can't be going.
We're in 4 different bases, right?
Yeah, you shouldn't even go.
Right.
This is Satan's military.
Exactly.
Yeah, I was going to say supporting Satan's system.
I want that tax-free food.
Right. Yeah. What were you gonna say, Robert? You want to give a few final comments about anything?
Yeah. Like I had said before, I'm not going to tell anyone what to believe, how to believe, what to believe, and what not to believe in. But because we're all responsible for our own decisions, you need to sit back, take the blinders off. Don't listen to what anyone's telling you. Research it yourself and come up with your own decision. Because at the end, we're all held accountable for what we decide to do. Whether that decision is by someone influencing you or not, we're still held accountable on our own decisions. And I wish everybody the best out here in their endeavors to find peace.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, man. And I share the same sentiment with you, that each one of us, we need to find our peace. We need to find what helps us to maintain our sanity, because at the end of the day, we're simply trying to be people who have a certain measure of happiness and live our lives. That's all we ever really wanted. We never wanted to have to jump through other people's hoops, other people's rules. We simply wanted to be, and that's why people become Jehovah's Witnesses. That's what kind of makes it sad. Most people who become Jehovah's Witnesses, they don't become a witness to be persecuted and to be laughed at in school and talked about. They were told something and it registered. I like this. They just didn't realize. Right. They just didn't realize it was bogus, and that's all.
Right.
Yeah,
that's right. So we are so glad that you were able to share your experience. I think that you just had so much logic, to share. And I'm so happy to hear you say that when you left, it wasn't about, I'm just finding out this ain't the truth so I can do wrong.
Yeah.
But you went out, did your research, and now you're here saying, and, encouraging other people to do the same thing. So that way, when you move forward in your life, you're continuing to make decisions that can be better choices for you and your family.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that is so important, because that's what ends up causing some people who leave to loop back into the organization. They go out there and they hit all kinds of walls. They end up in jail on crime. And they're like, well, I'm going back to the Kingdom Hall. It's safe there. But the problem was they went in the wrong direction when they left. If you go in the right direction, you'll find out it's the world is not what the organization paints it to be, cold and brutal with every person you meet. There are people who are bad. There are things you can get just wrong. But what you will find is that overall, people are simply people, not this big boogeyman that the organization paints out everybody to be.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And then another thing is that they have to realize is that the way you're pulled away from everybody and you're like somewhat cocooned, that makes you believe the fallacies about how that it was the religion or that healed you. Because you're looking at the religion, and as they say, it's the faithful and discreet slave. So basically what they're telling you is that the faithful and discreet slave has more power to heal you than you can heal yourself. And self-healing starts with self. And that's what it all comes down to, which is they don't want you to realize that.
Oh yeah, they basically sold us a bill of goods. To put it right, we got sold a bill of goods.
What I'd like to say about what you're saying too is, you were saying that self-healing starts with self.
Yes.
Okay. So when you think about that, all of us are unique. Yet the Watchtower has one prescription or one pill for everyone.
Right.
And so where I'm raised in an area and I'm used to being around people, or my personality type is whatever you want to call it, ABC. And I'm talking about everybody, not me. And so then we all come to this epicenter, the Watchtower, and they're saying for everyone that comes from all of these walks of lives, all of these experiences, all of these different personality types, I'm going to give you one pill.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't accept this one pill, then, you can't make it into this new system that they have talked about for so many years that never came true. And when you think about it, even when you go to the doctor and they write a prescription for an illness, they may give somebody 5 milligrams, somebody 10 milligrams, and they may even give somebody a whole different pill because this one over here ain't working for them. Yet the Watchtower is like, y'all gonna swallow the same pill and the same dose. And then they treat you accordingly to how you respond to that prescription. You know, some people might need liquid form. Some people might need a tablet, whatever. But the Watchtower says it's one pill and this is it. And that's why your aunt responded to you the same way. I mean, that's why your aunt responded to you when she saw you, because she knew you weren't partaking of that pill she was. At that point, she was like, wait a minute, I don't know about this.
Yeah.
You know, and I think they look at it like being at the Kingdom Hall is like the protection. Because I remember this lady, this sister, she had a hair salon, and I remember her talking about, I'm not going to be on the fringes of this religion. She said, I'm going to be in the center. She said, because I don't want to lose favor with Jehovah by falling out of the truth. That was her statement. And I never forgot that. And this is what people do. This is how they look at life. And they look at themselves, how much Watchtower stuff they're doing, as opposed to if they're not doing enough Watchtower stuff, they feel that they're on the fringes. And that's why she said she was going to get in the center of it.
Teresa Graves. You know who that is?
Yes, I do.
Get Christy Love.
Yes.
she became a Jehovah's Witness and died a pauper.
Yes.
Yes.
There's a sister in my congregation up in Harlem where I was at. She actually was a regular partner in our hall. She used to go out to Los Angeles every year and spend 2 or 3 weeks with Christy Graves. They was pioneer out there. She died.
Teresa Graves, Christy Love.
Yeah.
I'm dating myself here. The reason why I know, I used to watch the episode. It was only out for like 6 months. And we had went to Universal Studios in California. And we got there like the day before or after she was supposed to do her taping. So we missed it. Well, I was a little kid at the time. But I'm also doing Cicely Tyson's memoir. And in her memoir, she talked about the role of Teresa Graves, and she was offered that role. And she turned it down. And she said that the role was so bad that Teresa Graves, after 6 months, quit the show and became one of Jehovah's Witnesses. That's what she said in her book. And I was like, oh my God, I remember that. So it's funny that you said that, because I just read that yesterday, or just listened to that yesterday on Audible.
Yeah.
I don't know how she became a witness, but you said somebody in New York knew her, right, JT?
Sister in our hall. When the pioneer sisters in our hall, she used to go out once a year. I'm going out to New York. I'm going out to Los Angeles with Teresa Graves and Sister Graves. And so I remember, and she would come, and then she would come back after 2 or 3 weeks with the pictures. And we was here, we was pioneering on the streets on Vine and Hollywood or whatever. And so that was what she did. And so I mean, it's this organization, man. This organization jacks folks up, man. I'm just gonna be honest with you, jacks folks up.
It does.
Yes.
So it was just wonderful having a discussion.
Yeah, man.
With you, Robert, about your experience, and I want to thank you for reaching out, because I think you did. You were one of the people that responded to my ad on Facebook, right?
Yes.
Okay. I put an ad on Facebook, asking people who were unbaptized that we were doing the second series and everything, and I started getting people saying, "So why do you want to talk to unbaptized? Well, what's that all about?"
Yeah. For those individuals, it's very sad because they missed the whole point. They missed the whole point. We're simply trying to show people that, as I said before, it doesn't matter who you are. If you touch this Watchtower kryptonite, your life is going to be impacted. Some more severe than others, but people, you will, as I was told once, you will not get out of this religion unscathed. You will not unscathed. Now, some folks might get third-degree burns, and some folks might get first-degree burns, but you will not leave unscathed, because you're going to leave behind family and quote-unquote friends, and you're going to be out there by yourself. That's just the way it is. And see, now the organization is starting to make a circle, because now the issue of fading, the issue of being non-baptized, it is now coming back because the organization is basically teaching more and more the issue of making people take their stand. We have gotten so, in the last 2 years, man, the number of people who've emailed us and contacted us like, I ain't been to King Hall in 13 years. I'm not even baptized. And my mama called me up and said, the brothers want to know, are you coming back? I need to know today because I'm not going to talk to you. And so all of a sudden, they thought they got away free because they weren't baptized. Now they are swooping in and they're wrapping them in and tying them in the same way because the organization is locking its members down. They do not want anyone who can influence them. And so a lot of people who've never got baptized, haven't been to the meetings in 10, 20 years, their families are calling them up because that's the organization is focusing on now. They're doing this individual decision. They're letting them think that they're deciding how they're going to treat their children. And so, I mean, I've just been amazed, man, because I remember when it used to be like that, and then it changed over and said, no, we're going to treat you like man of the nation. And now they basically are like, if you leave and you're not coming back, we're gonna curtail some of this good time stuff until you get yourself together.
All right, so Robert, thank you so much for being on the program. This has been Lady C.
And this has been JT.
And we'll see you all on the next episode.
This program was sponsored by Critical Thinkers.